In the early hours of May 2, 2026, an airline told its passengers not to come to the airport. Every flight canceled, every counter closed. Thousands of employees found out they were losing their jobs in the middle of the night. Dozens of aircraft were left sitting at airports across the country with nowhere to go. That airline was Spirit. And what looked like a sudden collapse had been building for years. This is not a story about one bad decision. It is a story about 5 simultaneous crises hitting a business model that had no margin for error. And once you understand how each crisis connected to the next, the collapse stops looking like a surprise and starts looking like the only possible outcome. The ultra-low-cost model that Spirit ran on was simple: strip everything out, charge for extras, keep the base fare as low as possible. Southwest had proven it worked in the 1970s. Ryanair proved it in Europe. By the time Spirit fully committed to the model, the playbook was established and the results were real. In 2017, Spirit generated $421 million in profit. At their biggest hub in South Florida, they were carrying more than 28% of all passengers, more than any other airline at that airport. Pay attention to this next detail because it explains everything that came after. The ultra-low-cost model only works when costs stay predictable and planes stay in the air. Ground the planes and the revenue disappears almost immediately. Legacy carriers have premium cabins and loyalty programs generating billions of dollars regardless of individual flights. Ultra-low-cost carriers have almost none of that. Their entire business runs on volume, low costs, and aircraft utilization. Stop the planes and the math collapses faster than it does for any other type of airline. That is exactly what started happening in 2023. Pratt Whitney identified a manufacturing defect in engines installed across a large portion of Spirit's fleet. Inspections required grounding aircraft for extended periods. At the peak of the crisis, dozens of Spirit planes were sitting idle, generating no revenue, while lease payments, crew costs, and fixed expenses continued unchanged. Spirit received compensation. But for an airline operating on margins this thin, compensation was not the same as the revenue the grounded flights would have generated. Spirit had a plan to survive. The engine crisis was colliding with it. Spirit had been pursuing a merger with JetBlue Airways, valued at roughly $3.8 billion. A combined carrier would have more pricing power, a more diverse route network, and the financial cushion Spirit simply did not have on its own. In January 2024, the Biden Department of Justice blocked the merger on antitrust grounds. The argument was that eliminating Spirit as an independent carrier would reduce competition and raise fares for budget travelers. The court agreed. The irony would become clear over the following 2 years. The merger blocked to protect consumers from higher fares was the same merger that might have kept the airline alive. Without it, Spirit had no exit strategy and mounting losses. Spirit had not posted a profitable year since before the pandemic. In late 2024, they filed for bankruptcy protection. The filing bought some time. It did not solve anything structural. By August 2025, Spirit filed for bankruptcy again. 2 filings in less than a year. Losses for 2025 alone reached $2.76 billion. Then in early 2026, geopolitical conflict caused jet fuel prices to roughly double in a matter of weeks. For an airline already in its second bankruptcy with near zero cash reserves, it was the end. The Trump administration had been in advanced discussions about a $500 million government rescue package. It fell through. On May 2, 2026, Spirit was done. What happened next affected passengers who had never flown Spirit once. Aviation data firms found that average fares on routes where Spirit had operated jumped roughly 23% after the shutdown, around $60 more on a round-trip ticket. On some routes, particularly smaller cities where Spirit had been the only budget option, no equivalent carrier moved in. Those passengers lost their cheapest option entirely. The reason connects directly to how ultra-low-cost carriers function within the broader market. When Spirit was selling a seat for $89, Delta, American, and United had to keep their prices within range to remain competitive. The moment Spirit disappeared, that pricing pressure was gone. The remaining carriers had no incentive to keep fares low, and the data showed they did not. Spirit is not the first airline to disappear this way and will not be the last. The pattern is consistent every time. An airline gets squeezed between rising costs and prices it cannot raise, takes on debt to survive, runs out of cash, and either gets absorbed or liquidated. Other budget carriers are still flying. Frontier and Allegiant are still operating, some even expanding to pick up routes Spirit left behind, but they carry the same structural vulnerability. Legacy carriers launched basic economy to steal the budget traveler from above. Costs keep rising from below. The gap between what it costs to fly and what passengers will pay for a budget seat keeps narrowing. Spirit's collapse looks like a sudden event. But underneath, it was a slow disassembly that started years before the lights went off. The planes get repossessed and fly again for someone else. The routes get divided among competitors. The pilots get hired across town. Every piece of the airline gets absorbed by the rest of the industry. The real question is not what killed Spirit Airlines. It is whether the ultra-low-cost model can survive the cost environment it is now operating in. And that question does not have a comfortable answer. Spirit employed roughly 17,000 people at the time of the shutdown. Pilots with experience on the Airbus A320 family found strong demand for their qualifications. Several major carriers quickly set up dedicated recruiting processes for former Spirit crew. Flight attendants faced a slower and more competitive market. Corporate staff at the Florida headquarters had the hardest road. Those positions do not transfer easily to another airline, and no carrier was hiring an entire corporate department at once. 91 aircraft were scattered across 26 airports with no airline to operate them. Specialized aviation firms sent crews to physically repossess the planes, flying them to dry storage facilities in the Arizona desert where the climate prevents corrosion during long-term storage. Some of those planes will be repainted and leased to other carriers within months. Others will be broken down for parts. Airlines do not really die, they just get taken apart. And the ones who pay the price are the employees who lose their seniority, the communities that lose their cheapest flights, and the passengers who happen to be in the middle of it when it all comes down.